All right, hello. I am Ashley Tullis, and professionally, I'm a realtor with Realty One Group Mountain Desert. But today, I'm just another citizen of Flagstaff, and we're talking common sense. So I've got Jan Michael Meade here with us today. Thanks, Jan, for being with us, taking the time to be on our show,
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
of course. And what's your common sense take that you'd like to tell everybody?
My common sense take is that fasting is a legitimate and immediate tool that we always have in our tool belt in our life to use for our health and our healing, not only on the physical, but the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual.
I love that. And I've heard a lot about fasting, maybe on other people's podcasts. I don't have much experience with it myself, maybe a little bit here and there, like intermittent fasting, I'd
Mhm.
say. So tell us, what's your background? How did you get into this?
In the past, I have fasted here and there for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then even up to 8 days was one of the longest, and that was in 2020 during the pandemic. I just had the time, and I have 3 kids, so sometimes finding the time wasn't very possible. However, last October, I had a basically a medical crisis where it became very clear to me that it was time for me to have a full reset and to take that power into my own hands. And I very much knew that doing a long-term fast was exactly what I needed. So I took 22 days, and that there is a Taoist cycle of 21 days that they consider a full reset for the body, for the being. Um, so I did 21 plus one. That extra day was actually very important because that's when my body told me that it's now time to eat. It said no more, ready to go back. And so it was a full water fast. The only thing that I ever ingested that wasn't water was electrolytes, this particular brand that I can speak about later. And then a couple times psyllium husk and a saltwater flush, which was very important. But other than that, it was absolutely nothing, just water.
Wow, and that's really impressive. I mean, for someone to think, like myself or someone listening to think, "Oh, I'm going to do a 21-day fast," that seems like almost impossible. So you must have been at a breaking point where you're like, "This is life or death," like we talked about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what
This
was
was
that breaking point like?
well, necessity is the mother of invention, and so um, I'll encapsulate this in just a couple sentences, but I had a medical condition from multiple, ultimately injuries and accidents from the past, let's say about 10 to 11 years. Um, and it all culminated in a lack of clarity and knowledge from the medical systems that I had been going to. And so I had a very good friend, a nurse practitioner here in town, who said she'd be happy to see me and to look over my charts. And so when she did, she found out that 4 years prior, when I had been in the ER for something, I was actually diagnosed with a couple medical issues, as to which fasting is the perfect thing to do for it. They never told me at the time. At this point, I have forgiven them. However, there's been a lot of missing missing holes in my personal health record, and I haven't gotten a lot of direct help. Um, and so once I got that information, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So I went directly for it. Um, and when I made the decision, I made the decision. In the 22 days, I cannot recall one actual moment where I was hungry, as in the sense where you're craving food and you're thinking of eating. And that was actually very critical. The one or two times where I thought like, what what would it like, oh, what would it be like if I ate right now? That feeling of hunger came in, and that came in with a dysregulated nervous system response. So I just immediately stopped it. And then I went back into regulated system. And, I think that as long as your basic needs are taken care of, the feeling of being hungry is actually a good thing. And a lot of the world can deal with more of that. We're talking about, once again, we're not, if you are, your, your basic needs are being met, and also you don't have medical conditions that are disrupting your capacity to eat in a healthy way. So the feeling of hunger is actually autophagy. And a lot of people don't know that at all. Their bodies are constantly processing food. And there's a famous Japanese scientist who has brought it to the scientific world as an absolute fact that fasting and autophagy, uh, it goes so far. It's not even just about visceral fat. It's not about even the detoxification that the liver does. When we go into autophagy, our body literally starts eating cancer cells. So this is scientifically proven. This is healing. So my common sense take is that fasting is healing. And also fasting is magic. I never felt better. I actually didn't want to go back to eating food at the end. I honestly was sad when it came to that point, but I had to. My body said, okay, we did our work and we're ready to go back to this phase.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You brought up lots of different points there. The point that like most people don't go that long without food, and if they feel a little bit of hunger, they're like, "Oh my goodness, I have to solve this right now. Where's the nearest fast food place or something?" So
Hmm.
we should get more comfortable with that feeling in our
Yes.
bodies because it is
Yeah,
a good thing, and especially the food that we do eat. The
exactly.
food that's in the grocery stores and that most people are eating every day. I mean, people say that like for the average American, about 80% of their food is like hyper processed food. So,
Hmm.
especially if that's the food that we're eating every day, our body is like probably screaming at us, like, stop, help. you know,
Right?
um, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And, a couple points there is that, 22 days is extreme. Um, and I don't walk around advocating that at all. Nor am I acting like the world's next, fasting influencer. I have no interest in that except for supporting people on their path. Fasting could be literally just skipping a meal, and we have to remember that we're not going to die if we skip a meal for the vast majority of us. Uh, and then work up towards spend 12 hours, spend 24 hours, spend 28 hours. And even with that, just that in itself, there's so many benefits from there. However, the benefits all are based off of how you break that fast too. And I mean, that could be a whole, 3 hour talk right there in itself. And also, diet is subjective to what is healthy for each individual. However, you brought up a good point, and even in the natural food stores, I look at every label now, and there are so many additives, and there's so much added sugar, so many processed things that we have to be very careful no matter where we go. And now that I'm 4 months through this and staying very dedicated to my diet, now I'm capable of trying a little bit. I tried a little bit of the bread that my friend made on his own. So that was my first gluten adventure. And I felt pretty good, but I know I'm not going to feel good if I go back to the way that I used to eat. And another part of fasting being common sense is that when you get that reset, you have this opportunity and a higher chance of no longer being controlled by the things you eat and the addictions ultimately, whatever it may be. um, the fact that we need food to eat, to we need to eat food in order to live and exist in this world. we kind of feel like it's a pass and we can eat whatever we want and we can eat as much as we want, whenever we want. However, that's not necessarily true, and it serves the same addiction as smoking would, as drugs would, so on and so forth. And to be able to break that, um, to be able to exert that kind of self-control, um, for me personally, it is I've never felt better in that sense because I did it. I'm capable of doing that. I can control what I eat, and that is that feels like I just got to run the, New York Marathon and I was in the top contenders or something like that. It's like,
Yeah,
wow.
absolutely. And it
Hmm.
feels like, hey, this should be common sense, right? But it's like for everyone needs help with this, something like this. Like, you know, we in the United States are not eating healthy diets, myself included. So it's like it feels like common sense, right? Just the food that we're eating. Are we able to control the food that we're eating? But there's all these other strange, people and corporations who are manipulating
Hmm.
everything
Hmm.
that we are ingesting. So it's like the food is hyper addictive and super sugary, and so it's a problem. So it's really inspiring to hear from someone like you who went through a long fast, and that was in about October. You let me know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so how have things changed since then? Because obviously, you can't fast for 4 months, but what is your diet looking like now so that you're able to stay in that?
Yeah, so I'm tall, I'm 6'2", and I've always been pretty skinny, and a lot of the weight I took on was because of a digestive issue I picked up in India 10 years ago, and then a car accident 9 years ago, and really got dysregulated from all of that. And so I ended up, one thing is I took on a lot of weight, a lot of dad weight ultimately. The cortisol response really hit me hard, and my digestion just kind of stopped functioning properly, I guess you can say. So I lost, although this doesn't, weight loss isn't a direct attribute to being healthy. I think I want to make that clear. There's so many different body types, and we got to get away from this idea that losing weight equals being healthy. It's not true. However, for me, I dropped for somewhere around 45 pounds, and I was capable of getting back into where I felt great. And since then, too, keeping that with diet, uh, and once again, diet is subjective. I understand that there's literal carnivores out there, and then there's people who are strict vegans, and I don't touch that with a 10-foot pole. You know what's right for you. You go through your process for you. It is not something that we should be projecting it upon other people, right? Um, so for me, though, eliminating processed sugar of any sort, eliminating gluten, eliminating deep fried foods, ultra processed foods, and also even to a great measure eliminating things like cheese. Certain kinds, cottage cheese is quite healthy for you. There's something called paneer that I really love. It's an Indian cheese, um, and it still maintains its probiotics. However, a lot of the cheese out there is all coming. It's like something like 90% of all of the dairy is coming from one uh, big capitalist source, and it's basically all treated the same way. So staying away from that stuff has been amazing, and I reestablished my gut-brain connection in the fast. I remember the moment it happened. It was one of the best moments of my life to regain my connection to my body. Um, and so now when I eat something, I immediately know how it feels. And the truth is I did before. I was just ignoring it, you know? Like if I finish a whole a whole Ben and Jerry's by myself or a whole pizza by myself and I feel like crap afterwards, well, there's nobody to blame but me. But I would do those kinds of things, maybe not a whole pizza, but
Sure.
Now I'm like, I take one bite of something and I can register, oh, this isn't right for me. I'm just going to set this to the side now. And, and now it's an accentuation of really eating whole natural foods as much as possible. We're talking about uh, fruits, nuts, seeds, vegetables, legumes. Um, Although I personally would wish to be vegetarian, I do know that my body needs denser protein at times. So I eat salmon when needed and I eat chicken when needed. I personally stay away from red meat for personal spiritual reasons. And I can do that now because I'm eating healthy. Being a vegetarian who's eating ultra processed foods, that's not healthy and that's not good. And I also don't think it's that good for the environment. I do understand that also how people feel about how animals are treated is not good for the environment too. However, we really have to balance in our own way what is truly right for ourselves. So now that I am eating and also staying away from, I don't need to eat rice, massive mounds of rice all the time. There's ways too, a lot of people don't know this with rice and potatoes because they spike your glucose. If you cook rice and potatoes and then you give it 5 hours in the fridge and then you reheat it, it actually is even appropriate for people with diabetes to eat. And once again, this isn't a medical suggestion. I'm just sharing. There's ways that you can eat the foods you used to love in a much more conscientious way.
Well, and it probably makes your grocery shopping a little bit easier, honestly, because you're just buying whole foods, you're buying the same foods. Because I know, like, it's honestly a struggle to figure out what you're going to eat every day for dinner, right? So if you can, so one small benefit of this healthy diet is okay, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I know what I'm going to buy, and I know what I'm going to have for dinner, and I know what I'm going to have for breakfast, and I'm not stressing myself out just making a million decisions on just that, because that alone can be a bit much. And then you're trying to eat healthy, but you don't know what to get, and so then it's just this big kind of cycle.
Yeah, and you end up falling back upon the
Convenience.
yeah, the convenience and also I believe you have kids, right?
Nope.
Oh, you don't? Okay, well, I have 3 kids, so even the dread of having to balance 2 meals is what stopped me for a long time from making the adjustments. However, the 22 days of fasting gave me the confidence and the power, the empowerment to now, I just, I'm not going to make those decisions for my kids. I still give them as healthy as I can. However, I'm not going to force them to be gluten free if they don't want to. So I basically always cook 2 meals. Well, with 3 kids, I'm cooking about 3 different meals, minimum. However, now just like, okay, I'm going to do it. And the truth is that even cooking a delicious butternut squash curry doesn't take that much longer than uh, than other things that I was making before. So I just get into that groove and then also explore, experiment with everything that's available to us from the natural world, as natural as it is, it can be. Um, there's so much you can do. And even adjusting a dish with one ingredient it provides enough diversity in the palate to keep yourself enthusiastic and interested in it. Food is not boring in that way. We don't need everything to be, high fat or high cholesterol, it doesn't have to be deep fried, so on and so forth. And really, we've kind of, as a nation and even as a world, we've kind of dumbed our taste buds down to only crave sugar, salt, and fat. And it's like, get out there, like let a green bean taste like a green bean,
There we
you know?
go. Yes, without
Yeah.
drowning it in oil and butter and salt
Yeah.
and
And
bacon.
like, yeah, and my whole thing is less is more, you know. Uh if you were using, a tablespoon of butter, then make it a half tablespoon. You don't need that much. Um, water, use water to um, cook the first portion of your veggies, and then once the water's gone, then add the little bit of butter, so you're not drowning it in there. These kinds.
Sure. Yeah, the easy swaps, the little swaps. Yep. I think it's just putting it in the front of our brains sometimes. It's like, this is important. This is the stuff that I'm putting into my body, that I'm eating for energy. And then, we wonder, I wonder why I don't have much energy or I don't feel very good, but we've just been not eating very good. So it is
Right,
a big common sense topic. And I think, but it's just something that sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, if you walk into most grocery stores, you're really looking at like 5% that you can actually eat.
yes,
So it's
yeah,
kind of like, oh my gosh, it's a little overwhelming sometimes, I feel like. It's like, I will walk down some of the aisles and it's like, nope, I can't buy anything in this row. So it's just a little
right,
bit much. I feel like we're kind of like just really inundated with all of this big food when it's like we're just trying to be healthy. We're just trying to not get sick and get diseases. So
hmm
it's a
yeah,
balance.
exactly. And that's also the common sense of taking back your life from, I feel like the corporations, what ignorance that they impart and selfishness that they impart is on their shoulders. However, they don't exist without human ignorance and human selfishness and human laziness. And um, really, ultimately, it is our responsibility. And your health is your responsibility. And through going through the medical system, where, one thing is that the medical system saved my life. I owe in some ways everything to being alive in certain situations because of a car accident. However, too, through that process, I also had the medical system that didn't really give me a lot of options for a long period of time and just said, take these pills and get this surgery, which thankfully I didn't do because they were even doing this when they didn't even know what was going on, you know. And so this all pushed me into this place where I actually had to stop blaming the medical system too and say this. I ultimately, if we're going to move forward with any of these processes that they are suggesting, I first have to take full control and responsibility of my dietary life, everything actually. um, and the awesome thing is that I haven't gone back for any blood tests or anything. But just a case in point with, I spoke about the weight loss. However, I was also in chronic pain for many years. And it got to the point where it was a daily thing. And also I've had chronic headaches my entire life. And, and so now after this fast, and also not just the fast, but maintaining a diet, and not even just that, but maintaining an actual exercise regime where I'm making significant progress in my body. My chronic pain is 90 to 95% gone. My chronic headaches are 90 to 95% gone. And that's not an exaggeration. My life is totally different. My baseline has been raised. My stress levels are down. My capacity to handle life is far up. My depression is gone. Um, if I deal with any of those inner struggles, it's something that takes, even the worst of it could take an hour to get through, and then I'm back to normal. When before uh, I could be in those places for months. Um, and so now all of this is really, I mean, it really came from diet. And I resisted that for a very long time. I resisted it my whole life. Diet affects our mood, diet affects every single component of us. And even to the point, diet affects spirit. And I have been a devout spiritual practitioner for a long time. And interestingly, is that my spiritual progress, which is kind of not a real thing, um, it it stopped. I wasn't making progress in a certain way for a long time, and it was because I was resisting this interchange to diet. And now that I have, you know, really what it is that all of spirituality is actually about removing the obstacles that's keeping you from a natural truth inside of us all. That doesn't take anything; it takes no effort. So you remove those obstacles, then you're more capable of being present with what is. Um, and so really ultimately it's amplified that part of my existence too, very much so.
That. I think
Mhm.
that's great. That's really inspirational. People listening are um, probably, feeling energized and ready to take on a new challenge. And I think it's important what you said that we are responsible. Like we go into the grocery store and buy the foods that we buy or that we don't buy. So if we all come together and make a pact and say, you know what, we're sick of this, we're done with this, we're gonna eat whole foods, then the Cheetos company is gonna go out of business.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
let's do it.
exactly.
Let's band together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as a final point too, for anybody who's listening, 22 days, I was still a father to three young kids. I still worked out every day of my working life. And the critical thing inside of there is that you just simply prioritize rest. Don't take on extra projects. I actually didn't even in those 22 days, I stretched twice. I did not do any yoga. I took gentle walks. And it is that sincere that if you do a long term, put everything to the side and only do if it feels 100% right because you need to keep your nervous system out of dysregulation during that time. So you cannot force anything. And you most definitely cannot force the fast. If it's time for you to break it, then break it intelligently. And the last part too is that I was uh, incredibly blessed to have a wise person guide me through this. And if you're doing a long-term fast, you need someone to monitor you through this. Find the right person that can do that with you.
Yes, and on that note, is there a community here in Flagstaff that if someone wanted to learn more or wanted to give this a shot and they didn't know who to reach out to, is there any sort of
Mhm.
community that they could start with here in Flagstaff?
That's a good question, and she might uh, she might be upset at me for doing this because she's already one of Flagstaff's busiest women. But Phyllis Hogan of Winter Sun.
Okay.
Now with this is that once again, this is not a professional pay, and also she probably wouldn't even be able to take anybody on for this. However, she's the one that led me through it, and she's very good at it. Um, for any other resources in Flagstaff, I'm not sure how I did it with her guidance through it, her support. Um, is also during the time, I mean, there's so many awesome resources. And most of the resources that I was looking at, they were not spiritual resources on fasting, and they were definitely not influencer types. They were actually scientists and medical professionals who were speaking about fasting and diet. And I educated myself through this entire time through just 10-minute videos, listening to what was actually going on inside of my body. And I personally would recommend keeping it outside of, like, keep it in to where you're doing this for your health, not this is a conspiracy and we need to all take, the matrix kind of like, no, don't worry about that. That's going to spin you in a way. You're actually just doing this to get centered. Be in yourself. Let that be the center of your experience. And also support with real knowledge of what's going on with the cells in your body because that's going to keep you going through it. So that's how I feel. And also, once again, I act as an advocate, but I don't even do that for people personally. I think it's a high level of responsibility, and I'm personally not willing to step into those shoes.
Sure.
Yeah. However, what I do, can I share what I do in town? So I
Yeah,
practice,
absolutely.
is that cool? I
Yeah.
practice sound therapy. So that's I've been practicing for 14 years, and that's utilizing Himalayan singing bowls, East Asian singing bowls, gongs, medicine drums, and I do anywhere from large public groups to individual sessions. Um, and yes, I love this practice. And if anyone has experienced it, they know the joy of it. And if they haven't, they're more than welcome to reach out. And also teach meditation through a process called inner awareness facilitation. So that's what I do around town. And every once in a while, I've got a couple days at Macy's Coffee House where I get my social work fix to serving some good.
Nice, great. So you are really
Yeah,
kind of all over the place. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And so, well, my husband is instructor at Sleeping Lion Martial Arts. So we would probably
Awesome.
like to have you come in and do some sound bath or meditation type thing. But
Absolutely.
now, how would someone find you? Would they just kind of Google Jan Michael Meade Flagstaff? How would they find you best?
So if you're on Instagram, currently what I have set up, because I very do everything very organically, and I'm finally getting stuff formal too. But Instagram, and it's Shunya Meditation. It's Sunya meditation. Shunya is the gift that India gave to the entire world, the numerical value zero, and that also points towards emptiness. So there is a mathematical and spiritual value to that. It's the neutral space within all. And so with meditation, even with sound, everything is pointing us towards this beautiful open space that exists within us all.
Wow. Well, I feel like we could just keep going. I feel like we could
Yeah,
just keep
totally.
going and going.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been great. We'll wrap it
Yeah.
up here. But
Okay.
thank you, Jan, for
Yeah.
being
Thank
on
you,
our
Ashley.
podcast.
Yeah, this
And
is
yeah, we'll have to
wonderful.
have you next
Yeah.
time.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. Take care.
Thank you.